Millions of insects had come to life in an instant. This was the ceiling of my living room, even with the protection of the insect screens. Suddenly, on the outside of the door opening to the deck, was this. I had never seen it before this day, nor since. Outside of the door opening to the deck was this. I had never seen it before this day, nor since.
Despite those mysteries, there are some mysteries that are incredibly deep and more sublime. Like, how do UFOs read the consciousness of people? How and why does it affect the consciousness of people? Is it strictly the exposure to large electromagnetic fields? Or is it something deeper? How do UFOs know how to turn off nuclear missiles or how to turn them on? How do they know where a jet pilot is going to go to before they get there? Well, we believe the investigation of many different topics leads ultimately back to the powers of the subconscious mind, and where they lead to, which we like to call the lineman. You cross this line of reality here, you forget this materialistic world we live in, all your senses shrink, until you are still like a lake, and you can reflect everything in the universe. And UFOs and the subconscious mind meet there. And that's how UFOs can affect the mind. But there's also questions of how do UFOs affect the physical world? Well, modern quantum physics right now is leading us directly to the subconscious. Dr. Vernon Neppe has mathematically proven the existence of the Gimmel, which is essentially a consciousness field. Dr. Jack Sarfati calls this post-quantum mechanics and has a very compelling argument that takes us right here to the same place. Strangely, Buddhists and some of the most famous Buddhists,
what he says is inside black holes there is and it has to be supermassive black holes, and these supermassive black holes have to be spinning supermassive black holes as well too, and kind of like a spinning electromagnetic field, spinning things in our universe to canvas that everything is painted on. So let's consider this cube, the Higgs field, the texture of the universe, the canvas that everything is painted on. So let's consider this cube, this area right here, kind of the event horizon. And what he has theorized is inside of a black hole, there's a space called, I believe it's pronounced Cauchy space. It's C-A-U-C-H-Y, Cauchy space. And that once you travel into a hole, there's a really interesting little thing that happens. A photon can come in to the black hole, it passes the event horizon, and then, in this wacky orbital space, there is real space for matter to accumulate and come back together and form basically any type of of matter that we find in our traditional universe. So, but once you cross that event horizon, of course, crossing the event horizon is a whole other difficulty. And coming back together is a whole other different problem to solve. But extraterrestrial creatures that have been reported and that are visiting us are all second generation, meaning they're artificial life forms. These life forms are incredibly intelligent.
Que están en este canal y muchas personas que lo visitan piensan que el manuscrito Voynich es una farsa. Muchas personas piensan que el código borbónico es una farsa. Muchas personas piensan que el código serafiniano es una farsa. Muchas personas piensan que el código borbónico es una farsa. Muchas personas piensan que el código serafiniano es falso. Muchas personas piensan que los círculos de las cosechas son una farsa. Pero nosotros, amigazos, debemos comprender que el cerebro reacciona así ante lo que no quiere ver y lo que no quiere entender, y por lo cual no quisiera esforzarse para comprender. Nosotros aquí en este humilde canal hemos ido armando un rompecabezas a través de los años. Hemos ido armando un sinfín de piezas en una gran fotografía que al final quisiéramos que todo el mundo observara la fotografía completa. Yo en lo personal, amigazos, a los nuevos, a los que ya tienen años aquí y a todas las personas que nos visitan, yo quisiera invitarlos a formar este rompecabezas en su cerebro, a formar esta gran fotografía que al final de cuentas nos dará una respuesta a muchas de las preguntas que nos hemos hecho a través de nuestra vida. No nos dejemos guiar, amigazos, por personas que hacen videos o que dan información para obtener suscriptores o un beneficio para ellos mismos. Aquí es un humilde canal, por supuesto, pero nos esforzamos a que nosotros vamos a obtener en un futuro la fotografía completa de este gran conocimiento ancestral. Pero como siempre, amigazos, pues se los dejo a su criterio. Que la pasen bien y hasta luego.
temple in India. Normally, you will not even think of trying to touch or rotate the stone block, but someone accidentally discovered or rediscovered that it could be rotated. What could possibly be the reason to have something like this installed in a temple? To set up something like this, there has to be a rotating mechanism, and it's not easy to set this up in stone because you cannot open it afterwards and put lubricant inside. To have a rotating mechanism made of stone, you need to have advanced knowledge in engineering. No, this is not the only temple with moving parts. Look at this one. Here's a column which has small holes through which you can insert your finger. Inside there is a ball, a stone ball, and you can move it up and down. Of course, you cannot pull the ball out through these tiny holes. You can only move it inside the hollow column. How was the ball put inside in the first place? If you claim this is carved, how did they manage to scoop out the rock which was inside through these small holes? There's another ancient temple in a place called Uttarakosamangai. This is at least 1,200 years old. There is a ball inside a lion's mouth. You can roll the ball, you can rotate it, but you cannot pull it out of the lion's mouth. What's more bizarre? The lion is made of solid granite, but the ball inside is made of a type of rock called onyx. So how is this ball put inside the lion's mouth? And why are we not able to pull this ball out? More and more young people are becoming interested in Indian temples, and they're sending me incredible videos to my email. Here's a snake's mouth wide open, and the mouth is held open because Lord Vishnu's conch shell is placed between its upper and lower jaw. But you can rotate this conch. It spins very well, much better than some modern rotating devices. But the real question is, why were these moving parts set up in temples? Some say that if you move these parts in a certain rhythm, in a certain order, or a certain speed, secret chambers can be opened which are hiding in plain sight. Now, what do I mean by this? Let's look at this one. This is a safe box to keep money, and boxes like these were used in India for many centuries. There's a type of safe used by a group called Chettiars. They have mastered the art of safe making. It is so complex, it's uncrackable even today, unless you know which knobs to turn, in which order to open the safe. In fact, when a normal person looks at this for the first time, he will not even realize that this is a safe that can be opened. He will just think this is a decorative piece made of solid metal. But now, look at this ceiling in an ancient temple in a place called Vetuankolu. This is made of stone, and of course it has these fabulous and complex patterns of the 9 influencers called Navagraha and 12 zodiac signs and other features of astrology. But look at this area in the center. This is a doorknob, which means you can open this. This is also a very ancient temple, and because of time, you can now see the gaps between the door and the rest of the chamber. And look at these protruding circular knobs. I believe that if you rotate them in a particular pattern, just like the metal safe you saw, you can open the secret chamber in the ceiling of this temple. I mean, clearly this is a door which leads to something. In ancient Indian temples, there are many, many mysteries hidden in plain sight. We have not even started to understand them. Now, let's look at one of the most iconic megalithic structures in the World Heritage Site of Hampi. This is a gigantic stone chariot standing about 15 feet tall.
to think about its many requirements in order to be successful. The hull of the spacecraft, just in its most basic, has to be incredibly strong. It has to resist heat and the temperatures and pressures of space and of different locations in space. So it also has to be able to perceive its surrounding. So the skin of the craft could also act as a sensor. It would also be ideal if the skin of the craft could also create and move around electromagnetic focal points for a variety of reasons, from propulsion to scanning and defense and offense and much more. So as you can tell, the surface of the craft itself has a lot of requirements, and something that dynamic requires a metamaterial. And if many of these craft are like I suspect, they also, in the actual structure of the craft, all of it, every portion of the craft, is part of the computational aspects of the craft. So the greater the surface area and the greater the area to do computations, the more computations one can do. So in an ideal world, the craft should be able to do all of these things. Well, of the computational aspects of the craft. So the greater the surface area and the greater the area to do computations, the more computations one can do. So in an ideal world, the craft should be able to do all of these things. Well, how do you manufacture such a thing? Well, in something like this, called a Bolton sphere. In order to grow a metamaterial, and I say grow because most metals are crystals. In fact, all metals really are crystals. And crystals can be grown in zero gravity in electrosolution in a variety of dynamic ways. This Bolton sphere has electromagnetic emitters around it, resonators, an extruder, and a variety of things that can change the atmosphere within the sphere to accommodate the growth or retardation of crystals. So, very simply how it works is this sphere is inside a spacecraft somewhere out in space in zero gravity. It's activated, the pressure is turned on, and some initial seeds are put into this. And let's say your first material is manganese orthosilicate. Your second series of molecules or compound is, let's say you want something really strong, like the Lonsdaleite. And then finally you want something to be able to withstand tremendous amount of temperature, so you'll throw in carbon-carbon. And let's say you're building right now a robotic arm. So you have these initial seeds, and you activate your Bolton sphere, and you start creating and growing these crystals, or retarding them in the fashion and way and locations desired in order to create the parts you're looking for. So, imagine this as the inside bay of a larger spaceship. And inside is a smaller spaceship being built. And if we zoom in right here, in the center of that right there is another one of those Bolton spheres. And it is in an extruder, basically, a large device that kind of is like a tongue. And what it does is slowly lick the surface of the craft, building it, lick at a time, layer by layer, with the end result being an incredibly dynamic craft that looks as if it was molded all in one piece. But it's not. It's made by these little extruders, these tongues. In fact, this method could build a ship of any size. You could have numerous of these, building very large ships very quickly. I logical question is, how is this fed? Where is the raw material to keep building this from? Well, I simplified the drawing, but there would be a feeder tube to a supply machine here that would give the Wolfman sphere and the extruder all the materials, raw materials, liquids, and power source, and all the things it needs to do its magic. So, gang, that's a simple explanation of one way to build a spacecraft. Much love to all.
y a veces uno no las comprende. No las comprende. ¿Por qué razón? No lo sabemos. Aquí está el símbolo del aparato que vuela. Esto, por supuesto, no es un buitre. Es una representación de una voz. Y aquí al mismo tiempo nos está enseñando que una de las patitas, simbólicamente, claro, tiene el resonador conectado. Mire. Es increíble que en los detalles de las fotografías de las tablillas egipcias nos demos cuenta de tantas cosas. Y tan sencillas, mire. Estos que parecen unos bowls, que parecen unos pocillitos, no son otra cosa, amigazos, que el símbolo de la soldadura. Los canijos egipcios sabían soldar. Y soldar. Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos aquí a mi canal Decodificando el Voynich. Estas tablillas, amigazos, son unas tablillas egipcias muy difíciles de encontrar. Esta tablilla me la encontré por casualidad, por un decir así, en la que observamos a un hombre pájaro que se acaba de quitar sus alas. Aquí está una representación de la nave en la que llegaron. Aquí está la cabeza, el pico cuneiforme. Se alcanza a mirar también una especie de gancho, un símbolo de ojo que todo lo ve, un símbolo del Gran Tau encirculado. Y más abajo se ven estos otros seres que están aquí, que yo dibujé ahí rudimentariamente, claro, no muy bien. Aquí tienen uno que parece hombre pájaro. Aquí tienen otro, alien gris también, que parece...
Or a free energy device based on the ancient Indian design by Bhaskara. On the internet, you will mostly see this model, where bottles are attached to the circumference of a wheel filled with water. But this is not the actual Bhaskara's design. I've built the Bhaskara's wheel based on the original design by Bhaskara. Now what this has is that it has hollow tubes for spokes, and inside these tubes Bhaskara wants us to fill mercury. Now I'm going to demonstrate how this perpetual motion device actually works, and I do have mercury, so stay tuned and watch till the end of the video and let me know what you think. Now, who is Bhaskara? Bhaskara, also known as Bhaskara the Learned, is an ancient Indian mathematician as well as an astronomer who lived about 900 years ago. He was the very first person to think of a perpetual motion machine, a wheel that would run forever. He also made several key discoveries, including the principles of differential calculus 500 years before Isaac Newton. He realized that in this setup, the liquid would keep moving inside, leaving one side of the wheel perpetually heavier than the other, turning the wheel forever. But why do we need a wheel that runs forever? If we can invent anything that can run forever, then we could get free energy. Today, we are buying energy from external sources, but what if there's a machine which can run on its own? Then we can tap into it, make light bulbs glow, or run fans without paying for electricity. This is why devices like the Bhaskara's wheel are called free energy devices. Sometimes they're also known as over-unity devices because they can operate at an efficiency of more than 100%. If we make a device like this, we can get an unlimited supply of electricity. Will Bhaskara's wheel accomplish the job? Today, the internet is full of these wheels where people claim that this is the Bhaskara's wheel. The design is quite simple. It has several bottles attached to the circumference of the wheel, and these bottles are partially filled with water. I just added color to it so you can see it better. I made sure that the bottles are filled with exactly the same amount of water. Now, if I rotate, some people claim that this wheel will run forever. Let us see if this works. I have an online stopwatch, and I'm going to spin this wheel and start the stopwatch. Let's see how long this will actually work. So you can see that this wheel actually was spinning only for about a minute. Now, of course, this wheel is poorly balanced, and this is not the perfect model. But still, even if you made a perfectly balanced wheel, this wheel would have stopped anyway. Why? Because this is not the actual Bhaskara's wheel. As you can see, it stopped after just about a minute. So does this prove that perpetual motion machines do not exist? No, this is not the Bhaskara's wheel at all. This is not the Bhaskara's design at all. This is the Bhaskara's original design. I have designed Bhaskara's wheel as per Bhaskara's original design. It is a well-balanced wheel, and I've put ball bearings on it to reduce friction. The spokes are actually hollow tubes which can be filled with mercury, and I will show you how to make it run forever. But first, these tubes have been left empty, and I'm going to give it a spin, and let's watch how long this rotates. So I'm starting the timer, and these tubes are empty, but I'm going to give it a spin, and let's see how long this rotates. And these tubes are empty, but I'm going to give it a spin, and let's see how long this rotates. Okay, so you can see that it stopped. Bhaskara advises to add mercury in equal proportions into these tubes. So I'm going to use a syringe to take mercury out of this container and put it into these tubes and put them all in place. Making the wheel is a very heavy liquid and has some magical properties, and also does not stick to anything.
There was no, they're telling us 2 months later that you're all set. Yeah, say after, but yeah. Might be time, you know. It's seen all those sneaky that suddenly we, 3,000 things.
Okay, now, so you can see I've filled up all the tubes and this is the last tube, but watch what happens as soon as I put in the last tube. This is going to be very interesting. As you can see, as soon as I put in the mercury, the wheel starts to spin by itself. As you can see, as soon as I put in the mercury, the wheel starts to spin by itself. This is the perpetual motion machine, which will literally spin forever. Perpetual motion is actually confirmed by Newton's first law of motion. Newton says an object in motion will remain in motion unless there is an external force. Think of planet Earth and how long it has been continuously spinning without stopping. It has already been moving for more than 4.5 billion years. So how does this wheel spin forever? So this is a secret. I put my hand behind it as soon as I put the last tube and turned it like this. So this is how most of the perpetual machines on YouTube work. YouTube is full of videos which claim that they've created perpetual motion machines, and most of them, if not all of them, are fake. They realized that the best way to get free energy is by making fake videos and get AdSense money to pay their power bill. This is free energy if you think about it. So why does the Bhaskara's wheel not work? What really happens is that moving parts make one side of the wheel heavy and shifts the center of mass downwards below what's the center right now. So with the change in the center of mass, the wheel just acts like a normal wheel. It will slow down and then swing like a pendulum before it finally stops. About 500 years ago, Leonardo da Vinci took the Bhaskara's wheel and tried to create a perpetual motion machine. He added little balls inside the spokes instead of mercury. Of course, it's pretty easy to do this. All I have to do is add little metal balls inside the spokes. This is the Da Vinci's attempt at making a perpetual motion machine. And of course, this will also stop. It cannot run perpetually. So how continuously spinning will remain in motion unless there is an external force. First law of motion. Newton said, which will literally spin forever. Perpetual motion is actually confirmed by Newton's first law of motion. Newton says an object in motion will remain in motion unless there is an external force. Think of planet Earth and how long it has been continuously spinning without stopping. It has already been moving for more than 4.5 billion years. So how does this wheel spin forever? So this is a secret. I put my hand behind it as soon as I put the last tube and turned it like this. So this is how most of the perpetual machines on YouTube work. YouTube is full of videos which claim that they've created perpetual. Of course, the Da Vinci's attempt at making the perpetual motion machine also failed. This will also stop because it cannot run perpetually. Why? Because as far as we know, all perpetual motion machines break the first and second laws of thermodynamics. Now, this is almost like trying to charge the power bank with itself. Now, think about it. Did I just make a perpetual motion machine? Is it a free energy device? Am I able to charge the power bank using the power from the power bank itself? Now, this is not to say we may never come up with an actual perpetual motion machine, because we do not understand much about the universe, and many of us have a closed mind which does not think of new possibilities. Think about it. Before Wright brothers, a lot of scientists were convinced that anything heavier than air would never be able to fly in air. This sounds remarkably scientific, but some people do break these quote-unquote universal laws, and then it becomes a matter of fact. For example, think about making a device powered by radioactive decay from an isotope with a really long half-life. If we make such a device, it will run for thousands of years. We already have something called the Oxford electric bell, which is still years without stopping. It would take scientists 100 years to verify if it is a perpetual motion machine or not. And I think by current standards, such a device would be a significant step. Some have claimed that Bhaskara actually made another device which did run forever. It is said that many of his writings and inventions were destroyed, and this technology is lost. Remember, many strange devices were invented in India, including the anti-gravity jar. So maybe ancient people did build free energy devices. So what do you think? Is it possible until now? Like all Hindu temples, the main idol is situated in the central chamber inside this temple. But this lingam somehow radiates a lot of heat. As we approach the main chamber where the lingam is contained, you can feel the temperature rising. Notice how the entire stone walls have turned completely black because of constant radiation. You can see multiple fans placed all around trying to cool the place down, but the place remains much hotter than the outside all the time. It is extremely hot even during winter time inside the main chamber. When I visited the temple, initially I thought no one felt the rise in temperature except me. But when I researched this, it has already been published in multiple newspapers and several websites. Many have wondered why this is happening. The priests in the temple, so they actually use a simple cooling device from time to time. This cooling system is a vessel placed on top of the lingam which slowly drips cold water to cool the lingam down. But why is this happening? A stone is capable of giving out heat energy for many centuries without any power source? This is impossible. There should be some explanation for this phenomenon. I mean, how is this happening? Locals and priests explain that this radiation is happening because it is a special type of lingam called the Agni Lingam. Now, what is an Agni Lingam? Agni Lingam is a stack of energy, a column of fire emanating heat and light. This unique type of energy is said to be created in the underground portion of the temple. What we see here is just the top of the structure. There is a large cylindrical column which proceeds underground, which is what creates the enormous amount of heat. Since the heat produced by the lingam is very real, is it possible that such a lingam, a cylindrical power source, actually exists underground? If this is true, is it possible that the ancient builders also carved the entire Agni Lingam in this temple? Here we can see a man praying to this large cylindrical structure, but it does not look like a traditional lingam. It has many turns, many coils on the cylinder, as though it is wound with wires. And look at the top, there are thunderbolts coming out in all directions. This is incredible because this matches 100% with a modern day Tesla coil. Now, what is a Tesla coil? It is a wireless power transfer device. It does not need wires, but can radiate enormous amount of energy simply through the air. Nikola Tesla, an extraordinary inventor, created this in 1891 in an attempt to deliver free energy to the world. I mean, look at the Tesla coil I'm holding. It is a cylinder wound with wires connected to a battery, and we can see electric arcs which look like thunderbolts coming out from the top. This is exactly what we are seeing in the carving. Is the Agni Lingam an ancient Tesla coil? How else can you explain this 1,300-year-old carving with coils wound around the cylinder and thunderbolts coming out from the top? Tesla coils also create a lot of heat. You can feel the heat rising as you move your hand closer to it. In fact, it will burn your skin if you touch it. This is the exact same feeling you get as we walk closer to the lingam. As we move towards the lingam, we can literally feel the heat rising. Today, we have created large Tesla coils for experimental purposes. But did ancient builders also set up a similar device underground? If so, for what purpose? I mean, what could have been the reason to put a large Agni cursor using Tesla coil inside a temple? The answer lies in how we use Tesla coils. Today, doctors are using Tesla coils primarily for enhancing the mind into a deep meditative state. Was the ancient Tesla coil, the Agni Lingam, installed here to heal the body and mind of the visitors? People from around the world come here to practice deep meditation in this temple. This is why this area is called the spiritual capital of the world. Some of the world's greatest saints attained enlightenment in this temple. Are all these things mere coincidences?
Diese Skalierung bis dato nicht wirklich verständlich ist. Wir haben festgestellt, dass
Mayans are 5,000 years on this planet, and they knew a lot more than us today. What did the ancient people know? What we don't know now? A lot. For example, point the opposite poles. Traction. Ah, some force. Let's rotate the long magnets. Now let's see if we can shape the magnet a little bit different. Now bring back the long magnets. Wow, did you see that? Again. We can conclude magnets produce force. Force means motion, and motion means rotation. The Mayan engine. But due to the air and mechanical resistance, it won't leap you to another dimension.
One or two? One or two? Vamos.
Thanks.
Normally, we plant like it's even what we call salsa. In Canada, it's specifically.
I am back to Mexico, and they say to me, you want some sausage, some salsa, the tortilla. And I gone to the toilet. And so she's going over to Chile, so that's
Yeah, you have to be careful with that.
for us in Costa Rica, salsa is salsa, not Chile.
Yeah, but how many salsas a lot of sizes, but then you lost.
So, salsa. Here, let's see it sometime in, like, next to the, like, frijoles. Yeah. Funny, it's like Mexicans are, that shit.
No, there is a place to call it antojito, no, it's Mexican influence, antojito, no? But in Costa Rica, a friend of mine come out right there for the first time, and they put these things of sausage, like Chile, carne roja, es muy good, and this one first, they want this sausage with salsa, no? Boom, boom, with the jump, fire. Chile, Chile, Guatemala, much. No, not like Mexico. Before we leave, I said to them, we're going to go to Mexico, then we have to practice to eat Chile, then I begin to make Chile there with Guatemala, no? For master. If we are right here to Mexico, we have that so impression of this place. Really learn to eat Chile, we go to Chile.
Yeah, every health information says that it's so good for you. And nobody agrees with that.